is June 1979 in the sprawling concrete maze of the UCLA Medical Center in Los Angeles. The oncology ward has fallen into a heavy, suffocating silence at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Inside room 544 lies a man who defined an era arguably the very last of the true silver screen cowboys. John Wayne is resting there, his massive frame propped up against crisp, sterile white pillows. He is 72 years old, but he looks older, his once invincible body completely ravaged by the stomach cancer that has been eating him alive. The medical team has already whispered the grim prognosis he has days left, perhaps only mere hours. Just beyond his hospital door, the press corps circles like vultures waiting for a carcass, desperate for the headline of his passing. But inside the room, the atmosphere is sacred as a striking red-haired woman from Ireland settles into the visitor's chair. Her posture is rigid, her back as straight as a steel sword. This is Maureen O'Hara, and she has arrived to bid a final farewell to the singular Hollywood titan who never once tried to dim her blazing fire. Let me ask you a serious question. Have you ever been forced to say a permanent goodbye to the one person who fundamentally shaped the person you became? Let us know where you are watching from in the comment section below. And if deep dives into Hollywood history grab your attention, make sure to smash that subscribe button for more untold stories about cinema legends. We are peeling back the layers to reveal the raw moments that cemented the Duke's immortal legacy. These two powerhouses shared the screen in 5 massive motion pictures together. Their partnership spanned over 27 years, stretching from Rio Grande in 1950 all the way to Big Jake in 1971. When the cameras rolled, they were absolute equals in every sense of the word. His brute strength was perfectly matched by her indomitable spirit, while his legendary stubbornness slammed right up against her fiery defiance. But off-screen, they shared a connection that was far rarer in the fake world of Hollywood. They were genuine friends who deeply respected the warrior spirit within one another. At the time of this final visit, Maureen O'Hara is 59 years old and still radiating elegance. Born in Dublin, she was raised on the strict belief that a person's true value stems from their moral character, not their superficial charm. She first landed in Tinseltown with that mindset. It was 1939 and she was just a 20-year-old stunner with flaming auburn hair and piercing green eyes sharp enough to slice through solid steel. The brutal studio system tried its best to break her spirit and mould her into a puppet, but she refused to bow. She stood her ground and walked away with something infinitely more valuable than fleeting popularity. She earned undeniable respect. Now John Wayne is dying, a slow, agonising death fading out the way strong men often do, fighting for every single inch of ground until the end. Just 6 weeks prior, he was still managing to make public appearances, looking relatively robust. But the cancer had other plans, spreading aggressively through his stomach and stealing his appetite entirely. It robbed him of his physical power and that famous rolling swagger. Yet the disease cannot touch the essence of what made him John Wayne: the iron will, the personal code, and the absolute refusal. He simply refuses to surrender his dignity. This profound friendship began decades earlier on the dusty set of Rio Grande in 1950 when legendary director John Ford demanded O'Hara for the part. Ford wanted her for the complex role of Kathleen York, even though the studio executives pushed for a safer, more conventional choice. Naturally, Ford got his way. Wayne was 43 at the time, already a massive superstar. O'Hara was 30, actively establishing herself as the rare actress who could go toe-to-toe with any leading man scene. Their very first day of filming together served as their first real test of chemistry. Ford had staged a heavy confrontation scene between their characters right out of the gate. It was a tense reunion filled with years of simmering, unspoken anger. Wayne approached the scene with his trademark bluntness and direct emotional force. O'Hara brought something entirely different to the table. She found the raw pain buried underneath the script, tapping into the stubborn pride that kept two people. It kept them apart, even when they madly loved each other. When Ford finally yelled action, she didn't just recite lines opposite Wayne, she openly challenged him. She dared him to be better. The script called for Wayne's character to physically grab O'Hara's arm to assert his dominance over her, lesser actresses. Most would have played that moment as submissive fear. O'Hara played it as controlled, seething fury. Her eyes never once left his face during the take. When he clamped his hand on her arm, she stood even taller. When he raised his booming voice, she lowered hers to a dangerous whisper that carried significantly more force. It was louder than any shout could ever be. Ford called, "Cut!" and the entire crew fell deadly silent. Wayne looked at O'Hara for a long, heavy moment, then gave a single nod. It was a professional acknowledgement between two equals. From that split second forward, they were partners. Over the course of 5 feature films. Spanning 27 years, they forged a relationship built on mutual challenge. Wayne never insulted O'Hara by treating her like a delicate flower that might break. Conversely, O'Hara never treated Wayne like some fragile matinee idol who needed constant flattery to function. They were consummate professionals. They were the type of actors who brought out the absolute best in each other through a healthy dose of honest, gritty competition. On the set of The Quiet Man in 1952, their dynamic reached its absolute peak. The film required them to portray a couple whose deep love could only be expressed through explosive conflict. They pushed each other to the brink in every single scene, each trying to deliver the definitive performance. They wanted to create work that would define their careers forever. The famous fight scene in that movie required a level of real physical intensity rarely seen. O'Hara and Wayne did the stunt work themselves. She slapped him hard enough to leave visible handprints, and he grabbed her roughly enough to actually bruise her arms. Neither one of them uttered a single complaint. They implicitly understood that truly great scenes require a level of real, painful commitment. Between takes, they sat apart, not out of animosity, but out of sheer focus. Each was silently studying the other. They were looking for weaknesses to exploit in the next shot or strengths to match in their own performance. Director Ford watched them with immense satisfaction. He knew he had found his perfect screen couple. 2 actors who could generate electric chemistry through conflict rather than traditional sappy romance. The years rolled on, and Hollywood began to change drastically around them. Wayne and O'Hara stood as monuments to an older, fading tradition. A tradition of clear speech, precise movements and emotions expressed through decisive action, rather than the self-indulgent mumbling that became popular later. They made 3 more films together, and each time they brought that same spark, professional respect, expressed through mutual challenge. There was no ego and zero compromise, just 2 master craftsmen pushing each other toward excellence. Off camera, their relationship remained formal but deeply warm. Wayne always called her Maureen. She always called him Duke. Like everyone else, they never rarely mingled at Hollywood cocktail parties or shared drinks after the director yelled cut. But the second the cameras rolled, that chemistry was electric, a partnership forged in steel and mutual respect. Fast forward to 1979, inside room 544 at the UCLA Medical Center, and the curtain is finally coming down on that legendary duo. Wayne looks nothing like the cowboy icon. His face is skeletal, that massive presence whittled down to mere skin and bone. Stomach cancer is a brutal thief, having robbed him of over 40 pounds of muscle. Yet looking into his eyes, you still see that spark, the sharp, piercing intelligence that proved he was always far more than just a handsome face on a movie poster. Maureen O'Hara stares at the man she once sparred with on screen, seeing him trapped inside a failing vessel. He is physically diminished, sure, but his spirit is still present, still fighting the inevitable. She's been sitting by his bedside for 20 minutes, breathless and silent. Sometimes saying nothing screams louder than any dialogue script ever could. Beyond the sterile walls of the room, she catches the faint murmur of grieving family members and the hushed, grim consultations of the medical team. Inside, the only soundtrack is the raspy, laboured rhythm of Wayne's breathing and the crushing realisation that the clock is ticking down to 0. Finally, the Duke breaks the silence. His voice, once a booming baritone that commanded entire cavalries, is now barely a scratchy whisper, forced through a throat absolutely ravaged by aggressive treatments that ultimately failed to save him. You actually came. Of course I came, she replies softly. He offers a slow, weak nod. Even that tiny, simple gesture seems to drain a reserve of energy he simply does not have left to spare. I thought you might be busy filming somewhere. There is nothing in this world that couldn't wait for this. A heavy pause hangs between them, stretching out longer than the last one. O'Hara takes this moment to study his face, desperately trying to memorise the rugged features that have been projected larger than life on silver screens across the entire globe. But right now those features are just human, tragically fragile and fleeting. Maureen, yes, I need to tell you something. It's about the work we did. She leans in closer, terrified of missing a single syllable that might be his final message to her. You made me better, he rasps. Every single picture, every scene we shot. You made me work harder than I ever thought I was capable of. She doesn't fire back a response immediately. In Maureen's world, showing up means a hell of a lot more than pretty speeches. The fact that she is sitting here, having crossed the sprawl of Los Angeles to be with a dying man, speaks volumes louder than any tearful declaration. That was just the job, Duke, she finally manages to say. Wayne's lips twitch into the ghost of a smile. It was never just a job, and you know it. The heavy silence reclaims the room. The afternoon shadows are starting to stretch across the floor. The iconic golden sunlight of Los Angeles is filtering through the hospital blinds, casting a surreal glow. It softens the harsh clinical reality of the IV tubes, the beeping monitors, and the distinct sterile scent of approaching death. Wayne closes his eyes, gathering himself for a moment. When those blue eyes flutter open again, he looks focused, like he has made a final decision. I want to ask you something, he whispers. Ask me about the slap in The Quiet Man. You know the one that left real marks on your face. O'Hara remembers it vividly. How could she ever forget? It was the take that made the final cut of the film. That precise moment when the simmering conflict between their characters exploded into a raw physical confrontation. It was a scene that demanded absolute unwavering trust between two actors. What about it, she asks. You held back. She looks at him, sharply surprised by the accusation. After 27 years here, he is challenging her one last time. I certainly did not hold back. Yes, you did. You could have hit me harder. You could have really done some damage, but you pulled the punch just enough to leave a mark without truly hurting me. O'Hara pauses to consider this. He is right. She had expertly controlled the velocity of that blow to achieve the maximum dramatic impact on camera without causing him any actual physical injury. It was a moment of pure professional consideration masked as raw, unbridled emotion. You would have done the exact same. For me, maybe. But I want you to know that I noticed it and I appreciated it. That is exactly what made you different from every other actress in this town. You knew how to fight with fire without trying to destroy the person opposite you. The words hang heavy in the air, between them a final validation. Outside the door, the hospital bustle continues oblivious. Inside, two old Hollywood warriors are saying their goodbyes in the only language they truly understand. It is a language of respect, recognition, and brutal truth. O'Hara reaches out and gently wraps her hand around his. It marks the first time in 27 years that they have touched without a script telling them to do so. His skin feels alarming cold to the touch. That famous unstoppable strength has been reduced to fragile bones, barely covered by paper-thin flesh. Duke. Yeah, he breathes. It was an honour. He squeezes her hand back with every ounce of strength remaining in his body. The honour was all mine. They sit frozen like that for several minutes. Not speaking a word, not needing to say anything else. Just two consummate professionals who found something incredibly rare in the fake world of Hollywood. A partnership built on mutual respect rather than mutual exploitation. Finally, O'Hara slowly stands up. She knows instinctively that staying any longer would turn this sacred moment into a spectacle it was never meant to be. Their relationship was always built on clear boundaries, professional distance, and honest hard work. Even here at the bitter end, those principles hold firm. She walks toward the door, pauses, and looks back one last time. Wayne is watching her with that same steady, intense gaze he brought to every single scene they ever shared. Maureen, she stops and waits. Tell them he says his voice barely audible now. Tell them we were professionals. She nods once, a gesture of understanding, between equals always. She walks out of room 544 without looking back again. In the hallway, a pack of reporters tries to swarm her, desperate for quotes or a scoop about John Wayne's deteriorating condition. They are hoping for tearful, emotional statements they can splash across tomorrow's headlines. She breezes past them with a stony face, refusing to acknowledge their existence. 3 days later, the news breaks John Wayne is dead. The announcement dominates every television station across America. Tributes begin to pour in from sitting presidents to ordinary fans in the heartland. The entire world mourns the loss of a true legend. O'Hara attends the funeral stoic and dignified, but she does not stand up to speak to the crowd. She sits in the pews, keeping their final truth just between them. She stood quietly near the back of the venue, observing the memorial service with her trademark stoicism. When the press eventually spotted her and rushed over with microphones, she simply waved them away, refusing to give a single quote. There are certain memories that are just too sacred to be chopped up into 30-second clips for the evening news. As the years rolled on and journalists inevitably steered conversations toward John Wayne, she would always pivot to praising his incredible work ethic and his disciplined approach to filmmaking. However, she carefully avoided ever discussing the details of their very last conversation. That moment belonged to them and them alone. It wasn't until 1999, a full 2 decades after the Duke had passed, that O'Hara finally felt ready to pull back the curtain on that final goodbye. She painted a vivid picture of the sterile hospital room, emphasising the quiet stillness and the immense dignity Wayne maintained even as his body failed him. It wasn't a scene of despair, but a simple moment of acknowledgement between two industry veterans. As she put it to the reporter, he was the kind of man who realised that real power wasn't about dominating everyone in the room, but rather knowing exactly when to check your ego and when to charge ahead. That specific quality is what separated him from the rest of the pack. When she was pressed on how she thought Wayne himself would want to go down in history, O'Hara didn't answer immediately. She sat there really chewing on the thought for a good long while. Finally, she said he would want to be known as a consummate professional, someone who punched the clock, knew his lines inside and out, and treated every single person on set with decency. He never lost sight of the fact that cinema is a trade, a craft that demands sweat and dedication, not just fame. When Maureen O'Hara eventually passed away in 2015 at the ripe old age of 95, her relatives were sorting through her belongings when they stumbled upon something special. It was an old candid snapshot taken during the filming of The Quiet Man. The image captured her and Wayne during a break, not chatting, but sitting separately both, with their noses buried deep in their scripts. It was the perfect image of professional boundaries and deep mutual regard. When they flipped the photo over, they found a single word scrawled in O'Hara's distinct hand: partners. You see, the real story of their bond isn't hidden in tabloid rumours or idle speculation. The truth is right there on the celluloid. Across 5 different motion pictures, we get a masterclass in what happens when two titans of the screen challenge one another to be better. Those scenes resonate with authenticity because they were crafted by two people who grasped a fundamental truth: that making something timeless takes serious grunt work. John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara never allowed their dynamic to become about anything extraneous in a town like Hollywood, which essentially runs on manufactured scandals and publicity stunts. They were a complete anomaly. They kept strict professional lines drawn in the sand while managing to spark genuine magic when the cameras rolled. That final exchange in Hospital Room 544 marked the conclusion of a partnership you just don't see anymore. It was a union of equals, two heavyweights who forced the absolute best out of one another by constantly testing limits rather than offering hollow praise. And when it came down to those final words Wayne spoke to O'Hara, there were no tearful confessions of love or regret. The conversation remained grounded in the work, rooted in respect, and filled with the kind of silent understanding that only exists between true masters of their craft. It just goes to show that sometimes the deepest connections aren't defined by grand declarations, but by the things that go unsaid. Both Wayne and O'Hara seem to inherently understand this philosophy. Their entire alliance was built on a foundation of respected boundaries, unwavering professionalism, and a shared drive for excellence that came from pushing each other hard. That is precisely why their final farewell hit so hard. It didn't need to be melodramatic or soaked in typical Tinseltown romance. It was just raw, unfiltered honesty. Just two battle-hardened veterans looking each other in the eye and acknowledging the incredible body of work they had constructed together through sheer grit and mutual respect. If that kind of old-school dedication speaks to you, go ahead and follow along for more deep dives into cinema history. We are constantly digging into the defining moments that moulded the Duke into a legend and figuring out what we can learn from them in 2026. Now I've got to ask, who in your life pushes you to be better through mutual respect and honest challenge? Because often the most powerful bonds are the ones that don't need to shout to be heard.